Since the beginning years for the world of cinema, the stories and legends of the mid to late 19th century have been translated to the big screen. The Wild West, as they call it, and with that follows the genre of Western films. From the law to the lawless, cowboys, outlaws, and gunslingers are a part of the wild concept of Western films. With thorough storytelling and a sense of what's to take place in the American West, it's hard to not get encapsulated into all of the emotions that the Western genre comes along with. Tonight, five outlaws get the opportunity to break down their favorite Western films. So grab your lasso, make sure to have your gun in your holster, and let's ride. As we break down our top five Westerns, this is a Comic Talkers production, and you are listening to a Bronco busting edition of Just for Flicks. What's going on, guys? It's your boy Patty B. With me, as always, is man, what's a right-hand man in Western lingo? What's that? My
Sidekick.
Deputy.
Deputy.
my
Yeah.
there you go,
Yeah.
my deputy. I'm the sheriff now. Remember that. My deputy, my main man, Mr. B Dog, Mr. Brandon. What's going on, man? How you doing tonight?
I'll be your Huckleberry. No, I'm
I'm
excited.
There you
I'll be
go.
Huckleberry. Um, no, I'm excited. This is going to be a fun episode, and this is actually probably the most guests we've had on an episode. So we don't just have one. We just don't have two. We got three. We're going to take three steps in this duel for this episode. First off, I want to welcome my fellow comic talker to the podcast. You know her as Mary. Mary, how are you doing?
Pretty good. It's been a long week. Actually, this week been working on a lesson plan about American westward expansion, so this has been very topical for me. Um, I literally was reading primary sources about Bass Reeves this morning, on my 15-minute break. So very, very on topic.
Awesome, awesome. And our next guest, coming back from a victory with our crime movie trivia showdown. Please welcome back to the podcast, John. John, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. And Mary, I'm sorry. I apologize as a parent of a middle schooler. I'm just going to apologize in advance. You are
Oh,
not paid enough, no matter how much they're paying you.
no. No, my one kid has already told me. He looked me in the eye as I'm taking him to the bus today, and he goes, "I don't have to behave tomorrow. It's Halloween. I'm not doing any work. I've been behaving, so I've been saving up to be bad tomorrow." And I said, "That's not how that works." And he goes, "Yeah, it is." And I said, "Why are you doing this to me?" And he goes, "It's Halloween." And I was like, "Have I not been nice to you? So
We
what did
get to
I
be evil
do?"
for one day.
The logic.
So I'm already tired tomorrow, is what I'm saying.
Respect. And I work with elementary school kids, so
Oh my God, I
I'm
cannot
I'm
even.
I'm
I
with you.
know. I remember those days. Never again.
But I'm happy to have them. I'll take the little guys. You take the teenagers.
Yes, please give me the teenagers instead of the little guys. Listen, I
Uh,
love them. They're adorable. They're so needy.
Fact.
And we're excited to bring back another guest of ours. You know him as Big Daddy L on the Pulling These podcast. Please welcome back to the podcast, Elmer. Elmer, how are you doing?
All right, doing great, doing great. And just to add to the topic, as a husband to a fourth grade teacher, yeah, like my wife is already like she's like
She's
already with
already
a
tired
headache.
tomorrow. Yeah.
No, she has the headache already. Like tonight, she had to take some aspirin, she's going to sleep early. So good times.
And as a teacher up and coming, thank you guys for giving me a heads up now.
Oh yeah,
Halloween week is rough.
yeah.
Not quite as bad as like the entire month of March, but Halloween week is rough.
So
March is the worst month to work in a school, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we're going to be doing tonight, like Pat says, we're going to be going over our top five Westerns. As always, fans, these are our personal lists, not an overall list. So fans, let us know in the comments what your top five Westerns are of all time. And we're gonna start off with ladies first. So Mary, take the mic away. What is your number 5?
So, and I did tell you guys this um ahead of time. But so I'm gonna let the fans know because I want to see if they can guess this before the end. But all of my movies have an actor in common.
Okay.
Um, and the first one, a lot of these are earlier Westerns too. A lot of these are like mid-50s Westerns. And so my first one is actually Tension at Table Rock. So that's my number 5, which is part of the reason is I think the poster is cool. Because it's not a very like Western poster. It looks a little more avant-garde. It's like a little abstract. Um, but I think the plot is neat for this one. It's kind of about it's essentially about like getting stabbed in the back, but stabbing the backstabber first, and then all of the complications that arise out of that. Um, it's a fun one. It has Richard Egan, Cameron Mitchell, Edward Andrews. Like it's got small like names that we don't tend to like focus on when we talk about westerns. But it's really well done and it's a fun movie to watch.
Okay. All right. We're gonna turn it over to John to go over his number.
I'm just floored that the first movie out the gate is one I've never heard of because I like to think of myself as well read, if you can say such a thing for a movie fan.
Listen, I'm telling you, my grandfather was obsessed with westerns. This is all we did.
I love it. I love it because I'm taking notes. I'm writing down this title. I'm gonna go hunt it down. I know we were talking little John Wayne beforehand. I'm leading with a John Wayne movie. I'm going with his last film, The Shootist. I
Oh,
think is a phenomenal movie. If you haven't seen it, it's a great reflection on not only his career but the Western genre in general. Lots of great actors doing character parts. You got little Ron Howard running around as the kid in town. Yeah, you got Lauren Bacall in a great cameo role. You got James Stewart, who's always great with Wayne. A really great look at a cowboy dying of cancer at the end of his life, and of course, John was dying at the same time, and it was just a powerful sort of goodbye to his time as an actor. Not his typical film. I mean, he's definitely a little more touchy-feely in some of the scenes, and I think it's got a lot of weight to it because of what he was going through. And yeah, just a great movie.
all right. We will turn to Mr. Elmer for his number 5.
All right, my number 5. I'm gonna be the basic guy here and choose 310 to Yuma, the
Ooh.
2007 version.
Okay.
Because first of all, the cast is stellar. You know, Christian Bale, Russell Crowe, the underrated Ben Foster.
Mhm.
The acting was phenomenal in the movie. James Mangold was focused. He had the vision for this movie. I like to think of this movie as like his precursor to Logan like in style and tone
Mhm.
and like the brutality of it. It was just one of those westerns that you felt the tension while you were watching it, and it was just very like entertaining. And I was like, recent westerns are like give it like a hit or miss for me. So this one it was a surprise to me that I enjoyed it so much.
And you know what? And I just thought about this too with them. I always wondered how those two actors ever get along because those are two problematic actors
Oh
on.
my God.
And not only that, that's not the only movie they're in together too, because they're in Love and Thunder together as well.
Yeah, that set must have been insufferable. Like, yeah, it must have been like, oh man. Like, I feel sorry for the crew.
Great pick though. That's a great movie. It
Yeah.
definitely made my long form list.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go over my number 5. It is a 1957 film. I told the cast as well before the episodes. All my movies deal with different actors. There's not really like none of the main actors in any film on my list are the same. So this is my Henry Fonda film, and this is not one that he's typically known for. It was released in 1957. It's called The 10 Star. Um, the 10 Star Of course, like I said, Henry Fonda, Anthony Perkins from Psycho. You even have a young Betsy Palmer in this film. For anybody who does not know, this is Mrs. Voorhees from Friday the 13th. Um, it also stars Neville Brand and also John McIntyre. Snopes, of course, cynical former sheriff turned bounty hunter, helps a young, recently appointed acting sheriff with his advice, his experience, and his gun. Henry Fonda does really well in this film. He is the bounty hunter that comes into town. Anthony Perkins is the new appointed sheriff that nobody has any hope in whatsoever. So it's kind of like the new old guards teaching the new guard. Like, here, this is what you need to do. And it's a good passing. I love Fonda and Perkins in this film. And I love the fact that it explores the merits and pitfalls of standing up for what's right and wrong. This is a really great film. It was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Story and Screenplay in 1957. This is one of my all-time favorites. I can watch this movie anytime it comes on screen. This is one of my easier ones to watch with Henry Fonda. I'm not a big How the West Was Won or Once Upon a Time in the West fan. I like his lesser known films. But yeah, number 5 for me is the 10 stars. So we will go to Patty B for his number 5.
My number 5, I kind of felt like I had to get my John Wayne fix out of the way, so this was a perfect opportunity to do that for myself. For my number 5, I am going from 1956. I'm going with The Searchers. Um, this movie is just, I think it was innovative for its time as far as just how it was shot. That opening scene when they're in, the house and it just pans out into the beautiful countryside, like all in one shot. It is just phenomenal that this was made back in that time. Um, John Wayne, I know we talked about it off air before we got on this. He kind of every movie is kind of the same. He's kind of the same guy, right?
What are you talking about, Pilgrim? Yeah.
Yeah. But what I liked what I liked about him in this in particular is just how sassy he is. He's just a sassy old man in this movie. It's John Wayne, Jeffrey Hunter, and Natalie Wood, but him and Jeffrey Hunter's character, they're just back and forth throughout the whole movie, and it's so funny to watch. But no, like I was telling you, just this movie in general, it's just iconic. I think any fan that likes Western movies should definitely give this movie a watch because it's iconic. So
awesome.
I'm so glad you included it. It's such a masterpiece
Yeah.
on every level. And he's the villain. He's an awful, mean, like vicious character in that film.
Yeah.
All right,
Pretty
Mary,
badass in that one.
go over your number 4, Mary.
Yes, so I'm going with Waco.
Ooh, okay.
Um, it's a fun one where they release the guy from prison to basically let him become like the sheriff. And he actually fixes everything.
Is this Blazing Saddles? Wait.
Yeah, so the preacher suggests that the mayor release this guy Waco from jail to become their new sheriff. And at first he's like, no. And then his family gets impacted by all of the violent crime, and he's like, okay, I guess. And he immediately cleans the town up, but he goes up against this big crime boss. Um, and also the preacher's wife is the guy Waco, his ex-girlfriend. Like, it's super complicated, it's really messy, and it's just a delightful film. And it has Howard Keel and Jane Russell, Gene Evans. Like, it's just a really fun time.
I'm gonna have to watch this one. I'm looking it up as we're talking about it, and I like the movie poster. It looks intriguing, so I definitely have to watch this.
All right, Mr. John, it's your number 4.
Feel like I'm going to be the traditionalist on the panel tonight, and I'm down with that. only Clint Eastwood movie though. I'm not shaming Clint Eastwood, but when it comes to his westerns, there's some that I love and some that I don't like as much. But I'm a huge Josie Wales fan, so Outlaw
Oh
Josie
wow.
Wales made the list for me as far as Clint's movies. I think it's a great look at the end of the Civil War and the westward expansion. It's got great use of Native Americans early in its time for presentation of Native Americans on film. It's got great drama. The whole movie is just one giant posse chase, basically. It's really well executed, and the gunfights are phenomenal. And Clint is Clint. Like Clint crushes it. A really great performance by him. So this was always the one that I will most happily rewatch on the regular. Can get it. Some of his other ones can be, I mean, obviously Unforgiven, really heavy. This one I feel like is one that I can rewatch with a little bit more joy.
Wasn't that his first movie he directed too, or one of his first movies he
It's
directed?
early on. Play Misty for Me is his first time directing, which is obviously not a Western, but I think it was the first time he directed a Western.
Okay, yeah, it's that's why I said you're not the. I don't have a Clint Eastwood film on my list. That all my Clint Eastwood ones came in my honorable mentions.
It's
So
blasphemous.
Well, I got one, Elmer. At least I got one.
Yeah, yeah.
let's go to
Is
Elmer
it?
for his number 4 and watch. It's going to be a Clint Eastwood film. Just
No, 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 no. It's a little. I don't want to spoil anything yet, but my number four pick is The Quick and the Dead,
Ooh.
directed by Sam Raimi.
Ooh.
I mean, this movie came out right around the time I was getting into westerns, which was Unforgiven, which got me into westerns.
Mhm.
So watching this was like, I don't know, it was like Sam Raimi, the angles, the way he was filming like the duels and everything about this was so great. Every
Oh,
actor that was in that movie was like their traction was like right there, either at their peak or rising towards their peak.
That's such a stacked cast, man.
Yeah, like Gene Hackman, Sharon Stone, Leonardo DiCaprio, Russell
I was
Crowe
gonna say you
again.
got two Russell Crowe movies
Crowe
right off the
movies.
bat.
Yeah. Hey, what can
hey,
I
Elmer's
say?
into the problematic actors. Okay.
Russell Crowe looked pretty badass in The Quick and the Dead too. If they made an extra movie in the '90s, he would have been a great Gambit because he had the long hair, he had the rascal outlaw thing going on for himself in that movie. Keith David's in this movie, so this movie's just entertaining and it's like an easy rewatch. You could just be in the middle of it and you could just like and the whole showdown with Leonardo DiCaprio and Gene Hackman, that still tugs at the heartstrings to this day for me. So
You ever
yeah, I
wonder
really enjoy
why
that
he
one.
doesn't direct any more westerns? Because I actually have seen that movie, and that's actually a really good film.
Yeah, man. I think this was after Darkman too. Like he was just
Oh
like
yeah.
all over the place in the '90s. Like he was just like going into
Yeah,
different
Army of
genres.
Darkness. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Darkman. He had all. Yeah, it was.
yeah, yeah,
He's fine, and then he gets into Spider-Man shortly.
yeah. It became a studio guy.
All right, I'll go over my number 4. This is my only recent pick. If it's not on anybody else's list, I'm gonna really be shocked. I'm your Huckleberry. I'm going Tombstone as my number 4. This movie was just it's good. I'm not a big Kurt Russell guy, so it's hard for me to watch a lot of his movies. It's not on a level of George Clooney where I absolutely cannot stand George Clooney in any film I have ever watched. But
Kurt Russell, really?
Kurt Russell, like for me, there's only 2 movies I can watch of his, like on a repeat. This and The Thing. That's about it.
Go watch Overboard, my man. That movie's amazing.
I have seen that movie. It's just not one I could sit there and repeat.
Oh, all
Two
day.
words, Brandon. Captain Ron. Boom. Classic hit right there.
Like this is not my only movie that I actually like Kurt Russell in. This is the only movie I like Val Kilmer in too. I am not a Top Gun fan, and it's hard for me. Yeah, I know.
You're shooting shots left and right here.
I know.
Yeah, I was like, God dang.
I'm just not hitting my mark at this point now.
I wasn't ready for the showdown right here in number 4.
Yeah.
Well, bye.
But I like the chemistry in this cast. It really is really shocking to see some of the big name actors during this time all come in this movie and work so well together. Kurt Russell, Sam Elliott, Val Kilmer, Michael Biehn, Dana Delaney, Bill Paxton, Powers Booth. Powers Booth in this movie just makes me laugh every time I see him. Just
Yeah.
that's not a role I can see.
Billy Zane.
Billy
Yeah,
Zane
Billy
is in the
Zane.
Billy
movie.
Bob Thornton's in this too, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he's just gonna stand there and bleed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even Worker.
Zane, I forget about Billy Zane being in that. He's the
Yeah.
guy, right?
He's the actor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
With the fabulous wig.
Yeah, the one that Jason Priestley's in love with.
Yeah.
Michael Rooker's in it.
Yeah.
Stephen Lane is in this movie.
Yeah.
Thomas Hayden Church.
Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott. Yeah, it's a stacked cast.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy this film. I love the rivalry between Ringo and Holiday.
Holiday, yeah.
I love that little rivalry between the two of them.
Oh, and Charlton Heston. Forgot Charlton Heston has a cameo
Oh,
in that
yeah.
too.
It is just so phenomenal, and this is what's really going to sound bad. I only watched this movie for the first time about a year ago. I have never watched this because I've never been a big Western guy. I never have. So for me to get into this, it was like, okay, we'll see where this goes. And then it just got me in a whole train of Western films. So Tombstone was just one of those movies. It was just well shot. The way they did the duels, the way they did their little battles in between, it just was really well done. And so, yeah, Tombstone's going to be my number 4. Patty,
I will
That's
say,
actually,
yeah. Oh, sorry. Good. It did not
Oh,
make
no.
my list, but it would make a top 10 list for me. But it did not make my 5.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Same as
That-
same.
This was actually my number 2 pick.
yeah,
Brandon.
You got one person.
yeah,
Yeah.
he is my
Yeah,
hope.
there
Okay.
I
you
was
go.
trying to expand my horizons a little bit. I knew it was going to be an honorable mention. I just was trying to steer the ship of the Tombstone.
So, Elmer, what did
Yeah.
you like about it? Let's talk about it. You already mentioned it's your number 2 now at this point.
Like as I got older, it was like the most really like the behind the scenes stuff. Like there wasn't really a director really to like per se. Like I don't know if you ever heard like the stories like Michael Biehn will say about like shooting. It was pretty much like the actors just taking control and it's like pretty much directing themselves in the movie.
Yeah, Kurt had to come in and basically manage a bunch of it too.
Yeah. And I don't know, you could tell with the acting in the movie that it was just like it's like an actor's movie that they were just letting them do their own thing. Like Val Kilmer was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's like this and Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, like my 2 favorite performances from Val Kilmer. So yeah, I just really enjoyed this movie.
So
Like
Real
I could easily
you
had
should
like
wa-
a top 10 like with westerns, but like yeah, it was kind of hard for me to get like a 5. So like I had to put Tombstone in there.
You got to see Real Genius and Top Secret. Those are good
Yeah.
Kilmer comedies. You got to check out that soon.
So I have to admit, hopefully I don't make Elmer pissed at me. I have never seen Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Oh man.
Just means you got something to look forward to.
Yeah, there you go.
Now it's on my list to watch.
That's when everybody was like, "Oh, Robert Downey Jr. is actually a great actor. Like he's actually entertaining." I could see, and then you got Iron Man.
Yeah. All right, Patty B. What's your number?
So you guys were talking about Clint Eastwood earlier, and again, I got to get my Clint fix out of the way. I'm going with the movie that kind of brought spaghetti westerns onto the map. I'm going with A Fistful of Dollars. It's the first of the 3 of they call it the Dollars trilogy, which is A Fistful of Dollars, a few dollars more, and of course The Good and the Bad and the Ugly. I like this one in particular just because it's a nice start to the story. It's a classic Western feel to it. As well as for me, when it comes to certain films, especially when it comes to the Western genre, I either like them really elaborated as far as length of the movie goes, where it's a good 2.5 hour film, or to when it's really condensed to an hour and a half film, and that's kind of what this one is. It's a shorter watch, it's an easy watch. But man, I just they call him the man with no name, or what do they call him, Joe, I think, as a nickname. He's just such a badass. He really gives you that energy of he's just a man that's not to be messed with, and I love it. Um, the open scenery of certain shots gives it that iconic Western feel, in my opinion. when they pan out to the desert, or that opening scene when he's going into that little town and whatnot. And it's just it. I just love everything about this movie. Not the biggest Clint Eastwood fan. I do like some of his his directed films and whatnot, but as far as the westerns go, this was the one that kind of stood out to me the most. And but yeah, the Fistful of Dollars. Definitely got to check it out if you haven't seen it. So
And one of the things I like about that is that movie's been remade several times with different. So like the original was the Kurosawa film
yeah,
Yojimbo, which is like with
I have that.
samurai, and then Bruce Willis remade it as The Last Man Standing, where it's like a gangster film, and he comes to a small town with two rival gangs, and it's like the guns are like more pistols with like
Yeah.
three, not 357s, but like automatics. And so like it's kind of fun to see that genre or that story, the exact same plot. Like stranger comes to town, two rival gangs, I'm going to play them against each other, like has been done. And in the case of that film, they actually got sued by the makers of Yojimbo and had to pay them a
Yep.
ton of money to like cover the property rights,
Yeah,
basically.
they wrote Leone like a letter saying like it's a great movie, but it's my film. Like,
Yeah.
I liked it
and
when
then
I
they
made it
took
too.
the
Yeah.
Yeah.
um he's like just can I copy your homework?
Yeah.
Don't make
Yeah,
it
right.
don't make it obvious.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah, no, but and another one more thing I want to and we can kind of move along, but is the score to this movie. And I think in Leone's movies in general, even like non-Western movies of his, like Once Upon a Time in America, like it's just got really good scores, and it really gives it a certain feel to the movie. So
Let's turn it over to Mary for your number three.
Yeah, so my number three is actually also my only Henry Fonda film. And this is Warlock.
Yeah, there we go.
Um, which really stars Henry Fonda and Anthony Quinn, although they will try to tell you that Richard Widmark is actually the star of the show. He's not. Fonda and Quinn definitely carry this entire film. Um, and it's the relationship between their characters that really makes it for me. It's I think what I really enjoy about it, especially because this movie was made in 1959, and so it's really like before the Americans with Disabilities Act. But we are still seeing a very humanized portrayal of disability, and we are specifically seeing a character actively confront ableism and base the way that he interacts with others based around how they treat him as a result of his disability. Um, and It's just a really fun film. I love the book too. Um, and so getting to watch the movie when it's actually fairly well done is really nice. Hi. My cat agrees with me.
All right. Let's go to John for your number three.
So I'm gonna go with my one of the more recent. I have two from the 80s. This is the one that I probably watch the most of any on my list. Lawrence Kasdan, I think, does a lot of great stuff. Westerns are included in that, and I love Silverado. This cast is insane. This cast, obviously Costner and Klein are the two Kevins, but you got Scott Glenn, Danny Glover, Jeff Goldblum. It's just a stellar cast. Brian Dennehy as the heavy is just an awesome badass. Jeff Fahey. It's got everything I want in a western. It's got showdowns. It's got the small towns. It's got the ranchers. It's got the westward expansion. The photography is stunning, absolutely gorgeous. The music is super catchy, it gets you pumped up. And then the big finale is guns blazing. There's lots of great writing and stunts. And yeah, just every actor has something of use to do. And I think it's one of the tighter scripts from Kasdan. I obviously Raiders of the Lost Ark is on a different level, so we'll discount that as being his best. But like really just a really well done film. And considering how early it was in him writing and directing, he had just come off a Big Chill where he screwed Kevin Costner over and made him just the dead body in the movie. So he had to give him a bigger role here, and he gets to ham it up and be the comedian the whole time.
Why is it that I can't see Jeff Goldblum in a Western film whatsoever?
He's so great. He's the sleazy gambler, and he just is like he
Yeah,
comes to town and he's like he's just trying to like cheat at cards. He's got the tiny derringer up his sleeve and the little knife in his boot, and he's just like he is such a dirt bag. Like you just hate it. He's the only one that looks like clean, like everything is pressed and washed. Everybody else looks like they've just slept on the dirt, and he's like clearly he's been living in hotel rooms. He's perfect
Yeah,
for
I
that.
think I think part of it too is that when we tend to think of Westerns, we tend to think about the cowboys. We're not so much thinking about the folks in town.
Yeah.
And Jeff Goldblum is very much a guy who lives in town
Yeah.
Western character
Right.
and not a guy who is actively herding cattle
No,
character in a
not at all.
I just can't see him Western film.
Oh, if you haven't seen it, you got to
Yeah.
check it out.
I have it's on my list to watch. I have it up there on my
It's a
top.
great one. Scott Glenn is my favorite part of it, and he's the traditional like Eastwood kind of Western guy. He doesn't say a lot, and he's gunning everybody down.
All right, Elmer, let's go over your number 3.
And my number 3 movie is the only John Wayne movie I have here on the list, and that would be a Rio Bravo.
Ooh,
Isn't that
Yeah. So funny story is like the reason why I watched Rio Bravo for the first time was I love Assault at Precinct 13 by John Carpenter
Mhm.
from the 70s. So when I found out that that was that was based on Rio Bravo, I was like, oh, let me check out this Western to see like how it's totally different. My Assault at Precinct 13 is way more violent and more, but Rio Bravo was, yeah, I just, John Wayne. You had Dean Martin as a town drunk,
I love Dean now.
very on the nose.
Yeah.
It was the 50s. I think I was pretty easy for him to play at that time. You had Ricky Nelson,
Ricky Nelson. Yeah.
yeah, the teen, the heartthrob from the
Yep.
50s, as as a young,
He even gets to
eager.
sing a
Yeah,
song with
he's one of them
Dean.
that
And
comes. Yeah, he's one of them that comes into town and he's like, "We're recruiting you, son."
he's the
Like,
Yeah,
kid. Yeah.
yeah. Fun fact: he had like a set of twins, right? Two boys, and they were like that group Nelson back in the 80s. They had like a couple hits.
After the rain.
After the rain, there you go. So yeah, this movies. I always love these type of movies. The underdogs, and we have the low numbers, the bigger gang is about to attack, but you guys are facing the danger head on. They even got a character here called Stumpy, so everybody's getting involved to defend his little jail cell,
so,
jailhouse.
so fun fact of that movie. That's how my grandma got me to love Dean Martin. Was through
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah, I'm for fans who don't know, I'm like one of the biggest John or Dean Martin fans when it comes to music. So that's how she got me into him. And I was like, okay, I'm curious to see what else he's in. And then I remember watching Oceans, movies with him and Frank Sinatra, and then getting into all his movies. It was just like phenomenal. But yeah, I love him as a drunk. Like now watching him in other movies and how he performs outside westerns, another actor you wouldn't think would go to westerns, but I love him as the drunk. That sits there. I love the bar scene when one of them saying, what was a shooter sitting up on the pillar there, and he just goes shoots and he goes, "You want a drink?" No, I'm good.
And you
Another funny
believe him.
you mentioned Assault on Precinct 13, but even John Wayne remade that movie as well. Like that movie's been done twice with John Wayne. The other version is called El Dorado with Robert Mitchum as the drunk sheriff in town
Oh,
and
okay.
a young James Caan as the young kid who joins them up to help him out. And then in Get Shorty with Travolta, he's watching one of them and he does this whole spiel about how oh yeah, they just remade the same movie a few years later and the same story with the same, and John Wayne just plays John Wayne each time. He even makes the joke, like he throws it in there that John Wayne plays the exact same part
Yeah,
in
pretty
both movies.
much.
So if you've never seen El Dorado, Robert Mitchum takes over for Dean Martin, and it's a fun remake in a sense.
Yeah, I haven't caught that one yet.
Yeah.
I'll definitely check it out. Oh man, I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Cool.
El
That's
Dorado
cool.
is really fun.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go over my number 3, and this is where I say I was introduced to this movie in 2 ways. One, through a comic book film, and one of them is because one of the actors in this film is from one of my favorite sports movies of all time, Angels in the Outfield. Okay, I'm going if you guys don't know the comic book film, we already mentioned it a little earlier, was Logan. I'm gonna go Shane, 1953. Alan Ladd, Gene Arthur, Van Heflin, Brandon D. Wild, Ben Johnson from Angels in the Outfield for fans. That's a deep cut right there. I love that movie. I don't care. But Ben Johnson's one of those. I just really love how he portrays himself. And now watching that movie made me go watch some of his other westerns, and I really like him just overall as a actor. But the reason why I love this film, one, the shots. Right away, the beautiful shots they do in the film is so well done. The bar fight scenes are really great. Um, I love how they do the funeral and then all of a sudden they just pan to the city like, oh yeah, we're over here. Here's all the people who killed them. But I love the whole theme of the story is that you can't really escape who you were. You could put on different clothes, you can do all this, but in reality, you are who you are. And that's why I think you get Logan that way. You get that whole sense of, hey, you know what? I'm trying to turn a new leaf because of all what happened, but in reality, this is who I am. And to see that in the whole film is just great. It has one of my favorites quote, a man is what or has to be what he is, can't break the mold. And I think that's a perfect way how he ends it with Joey, which is the little kid in the film, which I'm not gonna lie, that little kid annoyed me so bad in that film. Shane. And he goes, I can't. I every time I heard of is Shane leaving us? I'm like, stop. I just, but it was still such a well shot film, such a great story. This is my favorite Alan Ladd story or movie that he does. It's just a really well told story, and it one of my favorites. I thank Logan for getting me into it more. Um, it just really well done. And so that
A great Jack Palance performance, and I remember an anecdote about him being so scared of horses that he couldn't get off the horse quickly. He had to get off incredibly slowly, but it became this great character thing where he just seemed creepy as the bad guy, that he was always moving super slowly as he's getting down off the horse. But it's because he was so scared the horse was just going to bolt on him.
Oh no, wait.
And then he goes on, and obviously he wins an Oscar playing Curly in City Slickers, riding horses and stuff.
Yeah. How funny that turned out.
all right, Patty B. What's your number three?
My number three, someone briefly mentioned it earlier in passing when they were mentioning another actor. I know you're a big fan of Henry Fonda, and after doing my further research, I am going with a Henry Fonda movie. I am going with Once Upon a Time in the West. Somebody had to do it, and your boy Patty B did so.
There's like four others that will have it on after.
I know, right? Um, you know, Charles Bronson is one of my favorite Western actors in particular, and this movie is like the epitome of how he is in a Western movie or who he was as an actor, in my opinion. Just the characters he would play just always seem like, again, like this badass, don't take no for an answer, no bullshit kind of guy. I'm here to get stuff done. And the tension between him and Henry Fonda's character throughout this whole movie, I mean, you could cut it with a knife. It's awesome. The fact that there's such a history between those two characters, and it kind of unfolds throughout the whole movie. But in particular, you don't really see those two characters kind of interact until like an hour and 30 minutes into the movie. Like it's super late in the movie. I mean, the movie is about 2.5 hours itself, but it's just crazy to think that that's where it kind of starts with them two. I think this is one of I think this is an underrated role of Henry Fonda's. I don't know if he gets enough talk for it,
It's
but
not
I
a
think
role you really think of him in
because
as
he's a villain, right?
he's one of the main villains of the story.
Yeah, and I just think he's an amazing villain with how ruthless he is. Like I wrote a couple quotes that I kind of want to go over real quick just so you can kind of get an idea. He also has some kind of comical lines like um How can he trust a man that wears both a belt and suspenders? Man can't even trust his own pants. Um, like you can't. It's just great. People scare better when they're dying, which is pretty ruthless. The future don't matter to us. Nothing matters now. Not the land, not the money, not the woman. I came here to see you because I know that now you'll tell me what you're after. I mean, again, it's just I think the way like he delivers these lines in the movie and just the way his character is, it's like I think he kind of steals the show in my opinion in this movie. It's a big reason why I like this movie is because of Henry Fonda. I think this is personally one of my favorite Henry Fonda movies besides 12 Angry Men.
Yeah,
But
see, you're welcome. I got you into that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But no, man, it's just it again in that ending scene where spoiler alert where Henry Fonda gets shot. It's just it's built that whole movie has built up to that last part, and that's what I love about movies that do that. You know, if they do a good job and tell the story all the way throughout, it has a pretty satisfying ending. So
And that movie's also star studded. When it's not even Charles Bronson and Henry Fonda, you got Jason Roberts, who was a pretty big name.
Jason Robards, yeah, he's good. Jack Elam,
Woody
um,
Stark, which is another big name in Western films.
Claudia Cardinal, yeah, Cardinal. Yeah.
The movie, the list could go on and on, but yeah, it's Fonda's one of Fonda's awkward roles, but it works for him.
It works really well. Dude, he kills a kid in that movie. I mean, he kills younglings.
I think we got a sense of that out now. Let's not take it back to
Oh
Star Wars
man.
and killing younglings there.
Damn, bro, he does kill younglings. It's terrible.
And they're old enough to hold lightsabers, they're old enough to die.
Hey, Elmer, where's Ernie in this case?
Oh man. Child soldiers of the force.
Enter Bruce Wayne. No. I thought I'd get married to laugh at that one because that one's the whole.
Oh, sorry, I zoned out for a second.
We were talking about like child soldiers and like enter Bruce Wayne.
I
Yeah.
know. I was like, Mary probably thinks like, oh, we're children. She's like, oh, you guys are children.
So let's go ahead and turn to your number 2 quick, Mary.
Yeah, so my number two is this is actually one that my grandmother introduced me to. This is Raintree County.
Yeah.
Now my grandmother's favorite film of all time was Gone with the Wind. She was obsessed with Gone with the Wind, and Gone with the Wind though is not a Western, and Raintree County is almost Gone with the Wind, but if Gone with the Wind was a Western, um, they're not. It's still a Civil War story. It's still very antebellum South. Um, Elizabeth Taylor is there. I don't, as far as I know, she's not in Gone with the Wind. I don't know actors. I don't really care about them. I know like five off the top of my head, and most of those people are dead. Uh, but like it's just one of those like really messy, dramatic. It's very much a romance movie. It is not like a Western as we have been talking about Westerns all night. It just is set in the West.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've seen
it,
this now looking at
It's I mean I'm kind of looking at the description of it, like you're saying, it's almost identical to Gone with the Wind.
yeah.
It seems like
it's
it's not quite, I mean, it's a romance slash war movie. I mean, it's 3 hours long. I mean, we're kind of following Gone with the Wind's
Oh,
footsteps
nice.
right
Yeah, wow.
now.
And Lee Marvin's in it. We can all love some Lee Marvin there.
yeah, and like it's not exactly like Gone with the Wind, but like it's as close to as to Gone with the Wind as you're gonna get from a Western ever.
Yeah.
We don't there aren't an awful lot of Westerns that are focused on romance.
Uh, I don't
And this one is also like very specifically a Civil War Western focusing on a somewhat unstable Southern belle.
And I'll wait till after Mary's number 1, but I can pretty much guarantee who her common actor is in this film now. So I knew exactly what the first two, and then I was like, okay, let's see what the next two are, and exactly what I thought because he's in both those movies as well. So I'll wait till her number
The
one.
the last one's gonna give it away completely because he plays a much bigger role in that one.
All right, John, let's go to your number two.
Well, I'm the John Wayne guy tonight, I gotta say. So I'm doing my second and final John Wayne pick. My favorite of his westerns is The Man Who Shot Liberty
That
Valance.
is also my number two.
I freaking love this movie. Lee Marvin again. So back to back Lee Marvin movies. Stewart again with Wayne. Vera Miles, a great role. But for me, this is about the a lot in the same way Unforgiven is. It's about the fantasy of what the old West was versus the reality. The way they use the newspaper man in town and the brutal death that he suffers. Uh, there's just some really great studies of drama going on here. There's only one real gunfight in the whole thing. Obviously, it's the title of the film. The rest of it is a lot of how do you solve problems? Do you trust the law? Do you trust the law of the land, or do you have to take the law into your own hands? And there's a lot of that going on. And then it's a really tragic role for Wayne. I think it's one of the few movies with that really heavy ending for him. And there's a couple of scenes that I think he just absolutely crushes. And of course, this is the Pilgrim. You know, we've thrown out the word Pilgrim
Pilgrim.
a few times, but this is where it came from. The only flaw I have can find in this movie is the fact that I'm supposed to believe James Stewart is like a young kid fresh out of law school at the beginning, and he looks like he's like 67.
Yeah.
It's like so that's but I'm gonna bite the bullet on that one, just let it happen because his performance is still strong and his speeches when Stewart gets going on what America could be and the importance of what it could, why do we have free press and why do we have a court system, and he just embodies a lot of the hope for the future, whereas Wayne is obviously the past and living by your hands and living from the earth. It's a really great look at Americana.
Well, it's kind of like you said, because like I said, it's my number two on this as well. John Wayne, I love him that he's not really the main focus of the story either. He's the main essential part of the story because you get that reveal, which I love that reveal at the end.
Yes, so good.
The way it's done and how they're talking about it. Like, what are you talking about? And he goes, oh, you don't know who really shot him, and you see the scene
Yeah.
when they go flashback. Lee Marvin, I love him in this role.
Oh man,
I love him as Liberty
that
Valance.
whip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just I learned with this movie, my grandma could not stand Lee Marvin as an actor. And I just went, this is what made me love him. Like, it's like but these are two actors I'm not big fans of. It's John Wayne and James Stewart, and I love him in this movie. I thought James Stewart has that annoying voice too when you really get him on a trend. But he's really well done. I like it's like John says, that whole tradition or the transition from old social order to now we got to go by the law. It's a whole sense of them transitioning. It's what led James Stewart's character to become a governor later on.
Yeah.
That sense of it's just really well told. The set design, everything that they do, how James Stewart's character comes in and starts teaching. I love that part too.
The little one-room schoolhouse, yeah.
What was it? One of my favorite characters. I can never remember his real life name, but I know him as the voice of Friar Tuck in the Robin Hood cartoon.
Is that Brennan? Walter Brennan?
He's the sheriff in town. He's the
Is that Edwin O'Brien?
Yeah, he's the cowardly sheriff in town.
Yeah, yeah.
Love him in this film. That's
Yeah.
like I said. It's just a really well told story, and I love that. I love John Wayne and James Stewart in this film, and it's one of my only favorite. Like, it's a John Wayne movie I could sit there and rewatch. It's
For sure.
not a lot of John Wayne movies I can sit there and rewatch. This one I can, and actually can take him as a really good actor.
We'll throw The Shootist on the list because it's another Stewart Wayne movie if you haven't seen it.
Here's what's unique. So Elmer's already went over his number two, which was Tombstone. I just went over my number two with John. So Patty B, what's your number two?
Couldn't resist the temptations. I am going with my most recent Western movie. This is the newest Western movie on my list. One of my favorite directors of all time. I might be imitating a character from that film tonight, I'm going with The Hateful Eight
I knew that was gonna make your list.
by Quentin
Uh,
Tarantino.
oh
I
wow.
I think much like Jackie Brown, that The Hateful Eight is one of his underrated movies. I don't think at the time when it came out, a lot of people appreciated it, especially if it was on the coattails of Django.
Yeah.
Um, it's just a dialogue monster. For me, it's the relationship between all the characters throughout the movie, the back and forth banter between everyone. There's two actors, or I should say, an actor and an actress in this movie that I think really stand out. And Walton Goggins, I think, gives probably one of his best acting performances in a movie, in this movie alone, as Chris Mannix. And a well-established actress. I mean, we all know her from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Um, Jennifer Jason Leigh, I think, as Daisy Domergue, or Demingre, as they say at the end. But um, Samuel L. Jackson always delivers, especially in Quentin Tarantino films. I think this one is no different. Him as Marquess Warren, but Kurt Russell, I can't say it enough. I think I can watch this movie. It's one of those movies where I can listen to it and kind of know exactly what's going on just by listening to all the dialogue.
I remember
Um,
you playing this one time when we were on a job together. And you
yeah,
were playing, I was like, "You watching Hateful Eight?" And he, yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's a comfort movie for me in a sense, to where, like I said, it's just one of those things where if I don't know what to watch, I can just put it on. It's got that classic. What I like about Quentin Tarantino movies is he always does like a flashback scene to something. So like when you have Marquez talking to Bruce Dern's character about how he killed his son because his son went out to headhunt Samuel Jackson's character. Anyway, I'm not gonna get into, if you guys have seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But that, and then hate him or not, man. I love his cameo in this film. Channing Tatum, for the 5 minutes he's in this movie, it's great. And that's the thing. When I first saw this movie, I was like not expecting him to be in it. I think when I saw the credits roll in the beginning, it says Channing Tatum. I'm like, Channing Tatum's in this movie? Huh? Um, but another thing too, one more thing is Kurt Russell. I think him as John Ruth really holds this movie together. I know he gets poisoned in the film, and gets blown to pieces after. It kind of becomes a I don't know if you guys have I don't know if John or Brandon, if you guys have followed this later in the film, how much he gets shot after he's dead.
A
Yeah.
ton.
Yeah. It's
It's so
yeah.
funny. I mean, it's not funny, but it's kind of funny. And then Tom Roth too. Tom Roth is another guy, and another Michael Madsen collaboration too with Quentin Tarantino. Like I said, I'll just end it on this. If no one's seen The Hateful Eight, which I'm sure all of you folks have, that's with me, have seen it. I just think it doesn't get enough recognition for what movie it is.
So, really quickly, before we go to our number ones, let's rifle off our honorable mentions if we have any. Mary, do you have any honorable mentions for your list?
So I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I've been thinking about Bass Reeves a lot. And so my honorable mention is actually a show, and it's not a film, and it's the Lawman Bass Reeves series.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Nice.
Which is incredible. I don't know if you guys know much about Bass Reeves or if you know who Bass Reeves is.
He was like
Heard
the
of it.
first
He's a
black
bounty
Texas
hunter, right?
Ranger or something like that.
Pretty much. So yeah, so he is essentially the real life inspiration behind the Lone Ranger, who I was completely and utterly obsessed with as a child. Um, and Bass Reeves is just so much cooler than the Lone Ranger has ever been, ever. So obviously he's my current hyperfixation. But
Cool.
he has a really fantastic story. So he was born into slavery, was freed during the Civil War, and then he became the first Black U.S. Marshal. And he even brought in his own son for murder charges.
Oh wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and he has like his obituary is genuinely one of the most respectful obituaries I have seen in a Old West newspaper ever. Like they were like, we don't know what to say about him other than this man is incredible. They're like, we like him. Everyone likes him. Unfortunately, he's dead now. Like it's he's such a cool figure. Um, and like very, very easy to see why he became the inspiration of so many stories. It's just very frustrating that those stories were so whitewashed.
Agreed. All right, John. What about you?
I'm gonna give some love to a real recent film, or not real. I mean, in the 2000s. I love Open Range, Kevin Costner's Western with Annette Bening and Robert Duvall. I think Open Range is just a really great Western, capturing the cinema of it all. The photography unbelievable, and then you get to the gunfight. It's probably my favorite gunfight in a movie. Like that last, it's almost like 15 minutes long. The gunfight at the end, it's just wild. And it's graphic, but it's also like just really in your face. Like it's intense. And a great performance by Duvall, who's always wonderful. Costner's, if you can't stand Costner, it's a great role for him because he doesn't say a whole heck of a lot. He's pretty quiet all the way through. But I love Costner in general. I just think his movies are really great, and he made a really understated, beautiful Western.
Awesome, awesome. What about you, Elmer? You got any
All
on?
right. It was a few, but this was like my most fun one that I wanted to do. Since it's an honorable mention, it's Posse by Mario, directed by Mario Van Peebles.
Heck yeah.
Like it's one of those movies like people don't really remember or really don't talk about, but it was really, great performances all around. Stephen Baldwin was fucking hilarious in this
Yeah.
movie. And it was like a fun, good Western action type film. It wasn't too serious. My only issue was like it's a little too clean cut. It was too many good looking people in the movie, but it was a great movie. It was a fun movie for what it was.
A ton of great action scenes.
Yeah, yeah, great action scenes. And those little history at the end of it shows you the credits, like pretty much the original cowboys during that era, which happened to be mostly black. And they tell their story and stuff like that towards the end of the movie. So that was pretty cool to see at the time.
Oh, I I'm gonna rifle off a couple of mine. One of them was already talked about, Outlaw Josie Wells. I also have Unforgiven, and I have Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah.
Now that's of course you can never go wrong with the Paul Newman Robert Redford duo.
Fact.
So, all right, Pat. What about you? Any
I
honorables?
I got five. I'll just rifle them off. There was a couple that were said.
Overachiever.
Uh, I had Tombstone, obviously. And then when John's first picked The Shootist, I had that on my
Nice.
honorable mention as well. I of course had to put Django Unchained on there because why not? Uh, I also had The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which is underrated if you like, short story westerns. It's fun. And I would say my number one honorable mention, and Brandon knows about this, but this was the film that kind of introduced me to westerns because I watched it with my grandfather for the first time when I was a kid, and I'll never forget watching it. It is The White Buffalo with Charles Bronson and Will Sampson, who, if you don't know who Will Sampson is, he's Chief from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, The White Buffalo, it's it's not a good movie. Let's just say that. But it's a sentimental one, and I love it.
Sure.
So,
And I forgot I should probably throw out Blazing Saddles because it's worth mentioning that
Yeah,
that's just
I
a
also
phenomenal Western.
same.
All right, Mary. Let's start with you. What's your number one?
My number one is the ever iconic gunfight at the OK Corral,
There we go.
which does round out all of my five. So, Brandon, who's my actor?
DeForest Kelly.
Yes. So I actually got into Star Trek through Westerns because of DeForest Kelly. So I have like the most roundabout way of getting of getting there. Because usually it's the other way around: is you watch Star Trek, you fall in love with Bones, you then watch everything DeForest Kelly's in. I had the opposite. Um, I watched Westerns, fell in love with DeForest Kelly, and was like, oh, I like sci-fi too, and then got really obsessed with Star Trek. Um, but I mean, it has Burt Lancaster in it. How can you go wrong with Gunfight at the OK Corral? It's like the quintessential Western film without being like the stereotypical like spaghetti Western. Like we're not copying samurai plots here. It's actually based on a real thing. Um, it's a wonderful movie. And fun for me and my love of history of medicine, there is tuberculosis mention, which was a huge highlight for me as a child. Which sounds terrible when I say it out loud. That sounded so much cooler in my head.
Bit of that TB.
And
Also call it
I
consumptive.
love those elements of realism, especially in older films like this, because you don't tend to get it a whole lot. Um, but I do really like it. And TB was such a huge part of the 19th century. It was just like a constant, ever-present factor in day-to-day life. And so the fact that it's actually referenced in this movie made me very happy. But I was also an incredibly morbid 9-year-old. So like
You want me to tell you how I knew it was DeForest Kelly for you? Because I remember when we first met, you talked about Star Trek and how you got your love.
Brandon is now in a Star Trek server that I made where eventually we will be talking about the comics. But I met an artist through incredible art of DeForest Kelly as Bones that I now own that print, and I'm trying to find a good place to hang it up. Uh
Yes.
Oh,
because he looks like very photorealistic. And I'm trying to find a place where I can hang it where I'm not going to feel like he's staring into my soul from the wall.
man.
I remember you talking about it, and I was figuring, I was like, if OK Corral's not on our list, I don't know what I'm going to say, because I'm a big Burt Lancaster fan. So you can never go wrong with him. One of my
Also,
favorite.
Kirk Douglas as Doc Holliday is
Yes.
Thank
so
you. I was
good.
waiting for someone to bring him up because he's absolutely phenomenal.
He was fantastic. John Hudson also did a really good job as Virgil Earp.
It, it's a really well done story.
It's just a good movie.
Yeah.
Everyone should watch this movie.
Fact.
I don't care if you don't like Westerns, watch this movie.
I remember, so my first Burt Lancaster film, really quickly, was Birdman of Alcatraz. And so watching that.
Okay. Have you read the book?
Yes.
Okay, good.
But I remember loving seeing Burt Lancaster portray him. And I was like, what else is this actor in? And that was my next movie with my grandma, was the OK Corral. It was one of those movies that just make you really love Burt Lancaster as an actor. It's sad none of his movies did make my list, but it's overall, I've never really have seen him do a bad movie. So that's a plus. You know, it's not like some actors like John Wayne and stuff like that's made some bad movies for me. But anyway, not the point. Let's go to John for his number one.
And I mentioned to Brandon earlier today that I was going to just throw some rules out the window and go crazy with my final pick here, because the truth is, every time I review Westerns and think about Westerns, like there is just one that seems for me that have done every aspect of this better than any of the others. And it's probably because it's based on a Pulitzer Prize winning novel, and that's Lonesome Dove.
Yeah.
This is it. This is the peak. This is it. Like, there is, as much as I love gunfights in other movies, or cattle drives in other movies, or small town sheriff dramas in other movies, or posse chases, or dealing with cowboys and Indians in other movies, this movie has all of it, and it's all done perfectly. And the cast is stellar. Tommy Lee Jones and Robert Duvall crush this, and they're amazing. And now my number one and two both have Danny Glover, and another great Western performance from Danny. This is stellar. The music gets me emotional just whether it's like pumping me up for the exciting sequences, or just absolutely turning on the waterworks for when characters are passing away, because that's the brutal reality of this journey, this cattle drive we're following.
Yeah.
So many great performances. Obviously, little Steve Buscemi early in his career, Chris Cooper early in his career. Angelica Houston is amazing. She's a tour de force in this. Really powerful performance from her. But because it's like 6 hours. It's got everything. It's absolutely jam packed and based on Larry McMurtry's phenomenal book, which you haven't read. If you haven't read, just read it. This is a phenomenal adaptation, but it's a superb novel at its core, and then several prequel sequel novels as well if you get into that whole universe. But yeah, Lonesome Dove is it for me when it comes to westerns.
See, I'm not the only one that chose a Angels in the Outfield alum because I had the general manager, I had the owner, you had the general manager, the manager
Yeah.
of the team.
Danny Glover and John Wayne. Who knew they would both appear on my list twice?
All right, Elmer, let's go to your number one.
All right, so my number one is the movie that got me into the whole Western genre, and that's Unforgiven.
Yeah.
I don't know. Unforgiven led to me discovering, the Man with No Name trilogy, which led me to into the samurai films that were based
Nice.
on them. So it all started with Unforgiven, and that's why it's like my number one pick. The performance, the performance in his movies were so on point. Like John said earlier, it's not one of those movies you rewatch all the time. It's one of those because it's very, very heavy at times, but it shows you like this illusion of how we view the West, the Wild West, the cowboys, and this and that. And you see it with Clint Eastwood's character and how he's just like he has like this family now, but he knows that he deep down he doesn't deserve this happiness that he has because he's this horrible person deep down, and like his actions throughout, like his reputation that follows him around, and everything about this movie was just so great. Like like I said, I can't watch it that often because I really don't want to see Lex Luthor beating the hell out of Dumbledore. Like you, you had my man Richard Harris as English Bob, which was that scene was
Oh,
just so hard to watch, and he was just laying the beating down on him, and that whole scene with Clint Eastwood and Morgan Freeman's body in the coffin, like,
oh,
and he's just like taking everybody out, and he's like, "I'll come back and kill the rest of you guys if you don't bury my friend." Like that's such a powerful moment right there, and you can see how the toll of that life takes on a person. That even like when the character of the kid when he kills his first guy, he's like, "I can't do this. Like I can't live this life. It's too much for me." And you see what it does to you in Clint Eastwood's character, and that movie was just it was like so impactful for me, So yeah, that's my number one.
I'm so glad somebody picked it because it's
Yeah,
definitely top 10 for me for sure. And
yeah,
that Richard Harris, Gene Hackman scene when Hackman basically retells the real story of what happened. Oh, you made this cute little book, The Duke of Death, The Duck of Death. Uh,
yeah,
and he read that scene, those Harris and Hackman. I mean, you could hear a pin drop when people watching that scene. It's
yeah.
so intense and beautiful. And then he gives him the gun. He's like, "Yeah, sure, give him the gun." Like that is like powerful film.
Well, not only that, you have a great duo that start and appeared in another movie of Clint Eastwood and Morgan Freeman. Is another great iconic duo when you really
Yeah.
every time those two are star in a movie together, you got good movies. Because this isn't Morgan Freeman's only movie that he does with Clint Eastwood either. He's got oh
Million
god,
Dollar Baby.
$1 Million Baby, yes. And then he's done other movies that Clint Eastwood has directed and
Mhm.
he's appeared. And it's just really well told. Um I'm gonna go with my number one, and I'm hoping Mary will get an appreciation because not only is this movie my favorite, it also stars one of my favorite actors, but there's also a secret meaning in history with this movie. Okay. This movie was released in 1952 and it stars Gary Cooper. Yes. It is High Noon.
Yeah.
This is when you really think about the meaning of this story, this was kind of like a jab at Hollywood when you really think of this whole story. Um, what was it? Pretty much the whole secret meaning of it. If you guys don't know what was going on during that time, and Mary and I have covered it multiple times on the
So many times.
it is McCarthyism. This is a jab at him because Hollywood was a target for the government during this time as a government or as a communist spreader. So they tried to take him out. The writer for this was at one point a member of the Communist Party, but gets himself out of it about 10 years before all this even occurred. And so it was kind of like a jab that Hollywood didn't have its back. And when you really look at the premise of the story, that's kind of what the whole story is about. It's about a sheriff who's played by Gary Cooper who's retiring. But in reality, there's a villain or a criminal that he's put away that's coming back into town. This is one I've told Pat he might like because it happens within a day. It's
Yeah.
an overall like a few days story. No, it's in one day. It's in a matter of like a few hours.
Yeah. It's
And
real time. It takes place in real time.
it has Lloyd Bridges in this film. The Bridges dad himself. This is one of my favorite scenes with him when he's drunk and he gets knocked out in the stinking in the barn. That made me laugh so hard as a kid. And then when you listen how Jeff was talking about how they had to really wake him up, it was that bad. But I love this story. I love that it allows us as the fans to see the consequences of taking a stand and how it must be weighed with the benefits of it compared to the of taking the stand. It's a sense of this city doesn't deserve the hero. It's a sense of when he took out this criminal that threatened this city, he's coming back into town and nobody wants to stand up.
Yeah.
And that's why I love the ending scenes when he gets into this whole shootout and he goes, you know what? You guys don't deserve it. This is why I'm retiring. This is why I'm gone. And he gives off his star.
Yeah.
And goes. I love two quotes from this film, and they're both from the previous sheriff. If you're poor your whole life, and in the end, you wind up dying all alone on some dirty street. For what? For nothing. For a 10-star. And he also says people got to talk themselves into law and order before they do anything about it. Maybe because down deep, they don't care. They just don't care. This is a great film. It is a well-told story. It is an hour and a half. You get into Gary Cooper's character really quickly. And I think this is by far, the only Western that Gary Cooper did win an Oscar for. Now, at the time, this movie almost didn't release because of the whole communist little jab that they were doing. And then it came out that they finally did it. And it's become an iconic movie overall.
And Grace Kelly. Don't skip Grace Kelly. I mean,
Grace
one of the
Kelly.
icons of cinema.
Roll
Grace Kelly.
Tide, dude.
You have Gary Cooper, Grace Kelly, Lloyd Bridges, Katie Gerardo is in this film. The list could go on and on.
For sure.
It's just a really well-told story.
Yep.
But
great pick.
Let's go to Patty B to finish this out. Give us your number one.
So my number one, as far as like a traditional Western goes with, the gunslinging, a lot of violence, this one doesn't have too much of that. This one more shows the landscape, the countryside of how, Westerns, as well as that typical Western story with families feuding and whatnot. I'm going with, this is an older movie from 1958. I am going with The Big Country
There you go.
with Gregory Peck, Gene Simmons, Burl Ives, Charles Bickford, and Chuck Connors.
Gene Simmons from Kiss? No, I'm joking.
No, not that. No, Gregory Peck is out of city, or he's a city guy going to the West. I think he's a retired sea captain of some sort. Um, Goes to marry the major's daughter over there, ends up not working out. But anyway, there is a big land dispute between the major and the Hennessy's, who was it Rufus Hennessy, who's played by Burl Ives. His son is Buck Hennessy, who's played by Chuck Connors. Um, it's one of those rare occurrences, I think, especially for a film back in the day like this, where you kind of root for the bad guy a little bit, or you root for um, the antagonist, I guess you'd say. Buck Hennessy is more of kind of a ruthless villain as opposed to his dad, who in a lot of ways is more of this humble. He's very to the book with a lot of things. His morals are on a straight path. It's one of the rare occurrences you have with family members that don't, that typically don't like each other, which is kind of weird in this case. But taking away from that, I think this movie from Burl Ives in this movie is amazing. I don't know if you guys have ever gotten a chance to see this film, but his
I've seen
character
other movies he's in, but I've never seen that one. That's
is
Rudolph the Red-Nosed
I
Reindeer.
know. Well, it's funny because when he was talking at certain points in this movie, I was thinking, "Have a holly jolly Christmas." I'm like,
Oh,
"Is that?"
silver and gold.
Yeah, yeah. But this movie, though, the big thing I want to say about it is the landscape and the choice of scenery really makes this movie pop. The visuals in the background in scenes is unmatched, especially for its time. Now, I know I've said this about a few of my picks tonight, but I am not kidding, guys. This movie is straight up eye candy. Um, like for the time it was filmed in, 1958, the fact that the images are so crystal clear, it's just remarkable. The color contrast of certain objects within the scenes themselves just makes this movie so awesome. Um, Fun fact, Brandon, this movie was actually filmed a majority in the Mojave Desert, but they have a lot of ranch scenes in this film that were filmed in Farmington, California, which is
Not
not
too
too far
far away. Yeah,
from where you're at.
that's about what, about
Which
45
when
minutes away or 30
not
minutes
a
away?
little bit up north, I believe. Yeah, yeah, at the foothills.
Yeah.
And when I read that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've been through there before." Like, what are the odds?
We've driven trucks through there. What are we
I,
talking about, right?
um, you know, aside from To Kill a Mockingbird, I think this is a really good film from Gregory Peck as James McKay.
Why do we love actors that are in Western films that go into law films later on? Like you have Henry Fonda who went to 12 Angry Men. You had Gregory Peck who went to Kill a Mockingbird. I guess Western actors do really good as lawyers. So maybe
Yep.
Tom Cruise should learn from that too.
To be fair, a lot of these Western actors were the leading men who are the only people laying down the law in the town in their movies.
Yeah.
That
But
is like a quintessential part of the
Yeah,
job.
pretty much.
I think this is a great way to end it. Mary, again, thank you for coming on with us. Um, Other than watching or checking us out at Comet Talkers, Mary, where else can fans find you?
You can find me on mostly TikTok, honestly. I haven't posted anything in a really long time because life is very busy. But you can find me on TikTok at also at the Quiver. Um, and I write a lot of fan fiction, and you can find me also on AO3 at the Quiver. Because I have consistent branding.
And John, as always, it's great to have you back on the podcast. Please tell the fans where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. John's Comics with Kids, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Yeah, hopefully you can find it. I do have consistent branding, so I've got Mary beat there.
Well, Instagram is just John's Comics with no.
Yeah.
All right. And Elmer, thank you again for joining us. It's always an honor to have you as well. Tell fans where they can find you.
Thank you for having me. It's pretty much Pulling D's all platforms, except for Facebook. It's Pulling D's podcast on Facebook. Gonna get the branding all the same all across.
But as always, check us out Just for Flicks or J4F Podcast on Instagram and TikTok. Check us out on Spotify. Without further ado, turn over to Patty B to take us out.
Yeah, thank you guys for everything. Thank you, fans, as always. And thank you, John, Mary, Elmer. This was a fun one. It was fun to talk about our favorite Western films. And remember, we do it just for flicks. Good night, everyone.
Yeah.